like the Sakat's original back there.
Let's go. Yeah, that's right. Exactly. What's happening, guys? I've got my main man, Jesse Elder, on the call today. Before I really introduce him and stuff, I guess this is my introduction. I've been following Jesse for a minute now, and every time I watch him, it brings me back to like what I call the old days. The old days are when I was training at my old martial arts school, and we would close down the school and have all these deep discussions about literally things that had nothing to do with martial arts. It was like philosophy, the government, taxation. We're going to get into that. A whole bunch of crazy stuff. And every time I hear Jesse talk, I'm like, gosh, man, I got to get him on this show. I got to interview him. I just got to get in his presence. So, Jesse, man, thank you so much for coming on here, dude. It's an honor.
Thank you, Carlos. I feel like it's been a long time coming. We just keep orbiting each other. We've got so many friends in common. And a theme that I see between all of our friends is like we really, really care about people and we really, really don't care about what people think. And it's refreshing. It's 2018 again.
Dude, it is great, man. It was great. And when I was watching your video, I guess not to jump too far ahead, but when I was watching your video in your group, I think was it a day or two ago? It wasn't
A couple of days ago, yeah,
a couple
Freedom
days
Teams.
ago. Man, what I'm in here, I'm looking at you. I'm like, he is amazing. This is a master class right now because I mean, you're selling people, but the way you're not, I mean, you're not really like selling. You're presenting your offer, you're positioning yourself well, and you're making it so people want to go to you. I mean, I loved, and we'll get into this more. I'm probably jumping around, but so many things I love about you, man. One of the things I was just like, oh my God, I dropped my blunt as I was smoking it. When I was like, this guy literally just said, I want people, something along the lines of like, I want people who are rule breakers. So do not apply. You know what I mean? And I'm like,
If you
oh,
don't qualify, don't apply.
you don't exactly. And I'm like, I wonder how many of these guys are getting this because now it's like my mind goes to, well, how do we make it work? How do we qualify? Do we just message him and see if he can help us? How do we make this happen? And I was listening to you. Tiffany was there. She was like, why did you drop your blunt? And I was like, Jesse is killing it right here. Man, this is unbelievable.
That
But
means a
let's
lot coming from you, man. I appreciate the depth of wisdom and experience that you have in not just martial arts, and I think that adds a whole depth to everything, but your skill in business and influence in copywriting. And so when somebody who's at your level can see it happen, it's like, you're a lead guitarist for a great band and the other great musicians in the audience, and they're like, yeah, it hits different. So thank you.
100%, man. So that's I guess I would assume most of the folks who are going to be watching this already know who you are. Like we said, we're connected with a lot of the same people, but maybe a little background on who you are for the folks who don't know, if you could.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward in a very nonlinear way. Oldest of five, born in Austin, grew up in Texas. My parents made the very courageous choice at the time, still a courageous choice for parents, but they decided that, you know what, this kid knows, we think he knows what he needs more than we do, so we're just going to love him, feed him, and stay out of his way. And so as a result, I never went to school, never sat behind a desk, never went to, the institutionalized prison known as public school. And it was basically do your chores in the morning. We'll see you at dinner. We love you. And so I rode my bike. I read books. I went to the library. I was 10 years old taking the bus in downtown San Antonio to go load up on books, come home. It's well before Google and the internet. So when I needed to know something, I was like, I have to know what the name of the snake is that I saw at the park yesterday. And my mom is like, if you really want to know, you'll figure it out. I'm like, can we go to the zoo right now? We have to go to the zoo. She's like, we're not going to the zoo, honey. I'm like,
Yeah.
I have to know. And she's like, well, if you really want to know, you'll figure it out. Who knows? I'm like, the zookeeper knows. She's like, where's the zookeeper? He's at the zoo. We have to go. She's like, no, we're not going to the zoo. But how could you talk to the zookeeper? I'm like, I could call him. And I remember being like 10 years old. But I don't know the number. She's like, if you really want to know, you'll figure out how to get the number. Where are phone numbers? I was like, the phone book. And then I, like a retarded monkey, I was like trying to figure out like where's the phone book, zoo in the phone book. Oh, Blue Pages. Oh, zoo. Oh, herpetology department, snakes. Called up. Hi, you don't know me, but I found a snake. Da, da, da. The fucking zookeeper is like, yeah, describe the snake. And I was like, it was mostly black, but it had a red stripe right down the middle, and it was about 12 inches long. And he was like, oh, that's a ribbon garter snake. I was like, I knew it. Thank you. Boom. That shit happened on the regular. So by the time I was 15 years old, got my black belt, teaching, assisting full time, and I just knew like this there's nothing that I can't figure out because that was my background, and it hasn't stopped.
Dude, what a way to grow up. This is so sick. I feel like you were, so did they do like a homeschooling type of thing with you? Did you school yourself? And that right there is like, you're schooling yourself in like the best way possible. This is like life lessons.
That's basically what it was. And it was very, there's a lot of love, there's a lot of support. Of course, there's always drama. My dad ended up he got arrested when I was 10 years old for aiding and abetting illegal aliens because he was helping Salvadorans who were fleeing for their lives. So, dude, I got a master class in principles, doing what's right, regardless of the consequences. So, like, if I could have written a better script for growing up, I don't know how I would have done it.
Wow, you're like the original homeschooler before homeschooling became popular.
Seems that way.
Dude, that's insane. So you mentioned being a black belt in martial arts and at like a teenage level, it seems like, right? So how did, as a martial artist myself, I mean, how was that journey? Like, when did you start? What did you train in? Like, just tell me a little bit about that if you could.
Yeah, well, it was all part of this sort of self-guided experience. So it was like, I want to get into Boy Scouts. I want to do this. Oh, I want to try martial arts. And so I tried martial arts, fell in love with it, trained pretty consistently, quit when I was 12 because I was like, I want to chase girls and be in the Boy Scouts. Realized Boy Scouts has nothing to do with camping. So I was like, screw that. Still interested in girls, but also super shy, socially awkward. So that wasn't working out. Found martial arts again and took off. Got my black belt when I was 15, Taekwondo, and was competing and training and teaching. And when I was 17, I told my parents, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. They're like, whatever you want to do. We're not going to help you, but we love you. You can do it. So I'm like, great, as usual. So ended up working for my instructor, competed Olympic Taekwondo, which was an interesting shift from like, point sport karate. Found myself in my first Taekwondo tournament. I was like 18 at the state championships, and I was like, what is going on here? Punched the guy in the face, which you can't do in a
Oh, you can't do that.
And I was like, oh, sorry. But I won that match, fought the second guy, and the dude he knocked me the fuck out with a spinning heel kick, and I didn't even see it coming. I was like, boom, and then I opened my eyes on the table. It's like, wow, this is time travel. He went on to go to the Olympic trials, and like, I didn't feel too bad about it. But I had a great baptism in reality when I was 19, because I've been doing sport karate and Olympic Taekwondo, and it was all rule based. And I was a secondary black belt. I, competed in dozens of tournaments. I was teaching full time. Like, this was my life. And you know how it is. You have enough people watch you do a sparring match and say to you, "Hey, man, good fight, good fight, good fight." You're a impressionable, insecure 19-year-old. You hear "good fight" enough times, you start to think you're a good fighter. So I was at this house party with this girl that I liked, and there's this dude giving me the stink eye from across the room. So I asked her, I'm like, "What's that guy's deal?" And she's like, "Oh, that's my boyfriend." And I was like crushed, because this is like a big deal to be out with this girl.
Of course.
And then I'm like, she has a boyfriend. So I was overwhelmed. I didn't know what to do. I was angry. I was hurt. And I was like, I'm leaving. So I'm walking out of the party. I'm going down the driveway, all, heartbroken. And so I'm walking down the driveway. I get tackled and I'm put on the ground and my face hits the driveway and the punches are coming. My first thought was, this guy's going to get disqualified.
Ah! Oh my God.
Because it's all
that was your reality.
Yeah, that was my reality. And so I very quickly realized there's nobody stopping this. Right. So I'm just like, my combat skills are like non-existent. 10 years of training was not only worthless, it was worse than worthless because it was getting in the way of my natural instincts. And so luckily people kind of pulled us apart. We're like squared off. And he's like, "I'm going to kill you, motherfucker." And I'm just like, he started it, right? Okay, no moral dilemma here. 3, 2, 1. And I roundhouse kicked him in the head, and he just like dropped. Right. I ran like a gazelle, jumped over his body, ran to my car, drove away. I was super adrenalized. I felt like I had failed my style because 10 years of training didn't work, and I assumed that it was my fault. I didn't realize that these styles were not designed for the real world. They were beautiful arts, but I really took it personally. I felt like I had failed my style. And I see this play out in marketing and business where people are like, oh, I did the fill in the blank, and I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus. There's obviously great people out there.
Sure.
But what I found is that most of the big famous marketing approaches are, in a way, they're very academic. And let's be real, most books are written to be sold. So it's like, here's the information, but it's not a partnership. It's not a collaboration. And so it's not a real relationship. And that's why most martial arts styles don't work in the real world, and a lot of marketing approaches don't work when it reaches the person who is supposed to help, which is the entrepreneur, because it's like they can't make the translation. And especially, like, I work with a lot of people that are like, they got into coaching by accident. They didn't set out to make money as a coach. They solved their own shit. People started coming to them, how do you do it? And they're like, I guess I should do this. But they didn't start this to make money. They're very accidental heroes. So the marketing heavy language, tripwire, they're just like, I cringe at that. My clients cringe at that, because like, a tripwire is how you kill an enemy or you trap an animal. Is that really the relationship you have with your clients? Like, it's fucked up. So, and again, I'm not throwing anybody into the bus. If it works, it works. But my martial arts journey, I faced a real fork in the road, because I realized I can't keep doing what I've been doing, because I thought it worked all this time. Now I got tested. I failed the test. It was a total baptism in reality. And fortune, fate, God, whatever is perfect, because literally, like, that summer, as I'm like trying to figure out, how do I train harder? One of my instructors is like, you should have been more situationally aware. I was like, great.
That's a good answer. That's a good answer.
Like,
I mean, that's a catch-all.
Way to dodge it.
Yeah.
But as fate would have it, one of my mentors, who is training here in Austin, his school was very successful, so he had time freedom. So he's using his time freedom very wisely to reinvest in his own training. And he was a Korean martial arts instructor, but knew that, hey, there's more stuff out there. So he was training with the Dog Brothers. He was training like old school people. And one of the people that he was training with, before anybody knew them, he was flying to Torrance and training at the Gracie Academy.
No way.
And this is like, dude, this is like 90.
You just gave me chills, man. Even when you mentioned Dog Brothers, my good friend almost got into one of their little collie fights and stuff. Anyway,
anybody who wants to Google, Dog Brothers or
this is why I love talking to you, man. I feel like this is like back 20
so many commonalities. It's awesome. It's awesome. So he sends me a literal video cassette, and he's like, watch this. So I put the VHS in, I watch, and it was Gracie in action. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? This is like savage. It's primal. I got it instantly. So I started coming up to Austin, training with him. He convinced me after a couple months to compete in this grappling tournament here in Austin. I was like, I just started. He's like, look, you're never going to be ready. So you might as well go now and be ready to fail, but go in to win. I was like, good advice. So I went, I had 3 matches. I tapped everybody out. I was like,
ooh, let's go.
Like, well, it was like the land of the blind, the one man is king. I know.
Hey, it still counts.
Yeah. So then that really began a new thing. Now I'm training Taekwondo, still competing Taekwondo, but I'm training in Jiu-Jitsu, and I was obsessed. I went to like every Jiu-Jitsu seminar I could. I was a bouncer at the time, which was amazing, because my first week, they're like, hey, you need to go throw that guy out. Because I'm like 6'3", 145. They're like, let's see what happens. So other bouncers were all like veterans, powerlifters. One dude won the national championships for powerlifting, benched 535.
Oh my god!
And so they're like, Jesse, why don't you go throw this guy out? So I go to talk to this guy. I'm like, hey, you need to leave. He's like, fuck you. He turns around, and I have my hand on his back, and I'm like pushing him out. And sure enough, I feel him stop, tense. He turns, throws his haymaker, and it was just like training. I was like, boom, 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 pulled guard. Somehow got an Ezekiel choke on him, choked him out. The whole time wondering, like, where are my homies? Like, where's my team?
Right.
I choked this guy out. He's like sleeping, head's on my chest like a 200-pound baby. I'm just like, there. And then I look up, and all the other bouncers are looking down at me, and they're like, all right, cool, you're gonna do great here.
Yeah, you're gonna do. They had to validate you, man. Make sure you were.
Well, it was perfect. And what I loved about it was based in reality. So a couple months go by. I'm working at this job as a bouncer, teaching during the afternoon, and then this is right when the UFC came out. So everybody now was like, what is this? Yeah. And I recognized it as the next great revolution in martial arts. It's like first revolution was American GIs coming back to this country, teaching. but they're like military dudes, so there's literally no kids. Then there's like Bruce Lee, and he's like whole, it's like
Jeet
not,
Kune Do.
let's not think about the style or the rules. Let's think about results. Then there's Karate Kid coming out, so they have massive amounts of kids and the commercialization of martial arts. This is the fourth big revolution, and this is reality-based martial arts. So I saw it for what it was, training like crazy. The club I was bouncing at in San Antonio, Sneakers Nightclub. This is where bands went to be born and die. Like in the same week, we had this old band called Foghat, and these dudes were just crusty, but they could still rock. And literally 2 nights later, we had this totally unknown band that nobody had ever heard of called Stone Temple Pilots.
Oh my God, what?
I'm telling you, it was like a time warp. So the club starts having these fight nights. They called it virtual combat, and it was no rules, no weight limit, no time limit, and no safety equipment. So I was like, all right,
How is this legal?
it was zero legal, zero. But I knew that I had the choice because I'm still teaching martial arts.
Yeah.
I'm not teaching jujitsu because like I really got the jujitsu culture that like if you're not a black belt, you better not be teaching. And I'd seen enough other paper tigers. I'm like, I won't teach. But I was training and teaching taekwondo, and then I realized I have an ethical dilemma now because I still don't know if I can really fight. Um, and yet I'm teaching people supposedly how to defend themselves. So I'm like, shit, I either have to do this virtual combat thing or I have to stop teaching martial arts. And I didn't have a plan B. Like martial arts is my life. So I signed up to fight. Long story shorter, had 3 matches that night, won all three, and I was addicted. Not to the violence, but to the connection between training and results. I stopped listening to like theories that sounded good. I was like, just show me, show me, show me. I had a bunch of people that would like challenge me, and I'm like, I don't know who's better. Let's find out. And then that translated into philosophy and spirituality and religion and nutrition, and it's like I heard all these conflicting theories and ideologies. I was like, well, what's useful? So I stopped asking what's true, and I started focusing on what's useful, and that's been a foundation of my philosophy ever since. Won 9 fights that year, lost two. One of them was a biblical loss. I ended up with a collapsed lung in the hospital.
Oh.
It was amazing. It was one of the best nights of my life because that's
What a
what
martial art guy. It was
well,
amazing.
it was amazing because it was the most painful night of my life up until that point. But I think pain is a messenger. It's not the message. It's just a messenger. It's just to get your attention. And I don't think there's any inherent message in pain. I think we get to create the message. We get to create the meaning and decide what it means. So I'm laying there in the hospital, can hardly breathe, and I'm thinking, how am I doing? Answer comes back to me, I'm fine, which was very confusing because I'm like, I just got my ass kicked, lost. I mean, I have who knows how many hospital bills. My students are probably all going to quit because I got my ass kicked. This is the worst night of my life, and yet the answer that comes up is I'm fine. So I'm laying there in a hospital bed, looking up at the lights, and I'm just like, okay, well, who's the me that got his ass kicked, and who's the me that's fine? Next thing, it was like typing in cosmic Google. It was like, what
What
about this?
what what gets you to think that way? Because that's not very common. I almost wonder if this is your upbringing of kind of figuring it out, because not many people can
It's
do
it's
this.
a it's a natural segue. Everybody's born that way. Everybody is that way, and everybody is that way still inside. There's just layers of conditioning and programming. That once you break out of that conditioning, you restore right back to your like factory settings of inquisitive, fearless, curious. Fuck, let's go. So
Yeah.
I just always had that. Everybody always has it. I just maybe had some different life experiences that caused that to be my default. So
It almost sounds like it was like you were nurtured to keep doing that. Like your family or your parents, it seems like by allowing you this freedom to kind of find your own way, and then it seems like they supported you, maybe not financially or anything, but like they told you, we love you, we believe in you, like that sounds like they're reinforcing this behavior. Like
100%.
right? I mean, so when you fighting is such an interesting topic to me because there's so many things you can learn from it. All these things you're talking about, I'm like remembering it. And when you were walking to the ring, how did you feel before versus when you were in the actual ring? Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of. It's a great question. Nobody's ever asked that question before. Um,
because I felt scared
Yeah.
shitless and running
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to do.
It went through an arc, and it wasn't like a perfect progression, but it went from being like numb. I was so scared. Like that first night, I was so terrified that I like checked out. I was just about disassociated from my
Yeah.
body. I was so scared. But once the thing started, training kicks in and you just don't think anymore. Um, and then I realized in the days leading up to these matches, which were every couple weeks, um, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I had diarrhea. I wanted to throw up. I was like stressed out. Luckily, teaching took my mind off of that. But that's when I learned how to meditate very accidentally. Just that when I would just be still and visualize winning, that the fear went away. And I was like, oh, interesting. Okay, so I learned to visualize and meditate as a defense against this crippling fear. And then I started to see that as I would visualize myself winning, my training was affected. I began to train like I'd already won. And I began to have weird experiences of like reverse deja vu. I started to see the future. And then it seemed like I would blink my eyes and it's 2 weeks later and I'm having my hand raised. I was like, this is exactly like I saw it. Interesting. So I started doing that with everything. I started doing it with money and teaching and everything in my life. Um, and so that was a real formative period. And I ended up opening my school, kept it taekwondo, kept jujitsu for myself personally, and realized right away I had no idea how to sell, really no idea how to teach. I could enroll people if they came in, but I didn't know how to get them to come in. So I just applied the same training methodologies from fighting and especially the no holds barred stuff, and I just began to apply it to language. And I started to test different things that worked. And I realized that when the phone would ring like once every 2 weeks, and somebody's like, I want information about classes, I realized this is not the optimal response. You're training, fighting during the day, working out, phone rings, you pick it up, first ring, fatal. Pick up the first ring like you're needy. You're like, hello? And I'm like,
Oh God. Yeah.
East West Karate. And the other person's like, how much are your classes? I'm like, $80 a month. And they're like, okay, do you teach kids? Yes. And they're like, okay, we'll call you back. Okay, fine. Losers. Like, I realized that's probably not the best like script to use. So then I started testing different things that worked, had some good mentorship, and within 2 weeks it was like, first ring, let it go, don't be needy. Second ring, wait a beat. This is a future student. We're having a great day at East West Karate. This is Mr. Elder. How can I help you? And on and on. Appointments start going through the roof. I learned all this stuff from training, applied it to scripts, applied it to objections, applied it to overcoming, my own money issues. And like within a month and a half, went from barely being able to pay the bills to like 20,000 a month, which on 5K expenses, not too bad.
Oh no, that's great. Yeah.
So, and it just kept going from there. We ended up a couple of years later, I've got 3 schools. We're doing $1 million a year. Then I start teaching other people how to do it. I had no idea what I was doing, but I read a Dan Kennedy book and I was like, all right, it's in my subconscious somewhere. So I didn't know how good this was until later because I didn't have anything to compare it to. And I realized that sounds like a very douchey thing I just said.
Yeah, it's okay.
I don't realize how good it was. But I literally went back and put myself in the same state that I was in when I opened my school. And now I'm making $1 million a year. We've got 3 schools. Everything's good. But I literally went back and ate the same things. I ate top ramen for a week while I was writing the sales letter. I went back to the old club and just like hung out and remembered what it was like to struggle financially. And I put myself back in that state and I just tranced out and wrote what became an 18-page sales letter that's like, hey, you're probably here. This is where you're at. I know because here's where I was. Here's my story. Da da da. Depression, overwhelmed, ideation, all sorts of shit. I figured it out. Started training. Da da da. Now here's the reality. It was 18-page sales letter. I sent it to 70 or 75 guys that I had in my phone from tournaments, conventions, all these things. Hand addressed the letter. Didn't realize that was smart. I just didn't know how to make a mailing label.
Right, right.
So I send this letter out. Dude, I got back 20 checks for $5,000.
Whoa.
And that was my first time selling wisdom and information that wasn't a martial arts membership. And so those people came. I taught them my system, how to teach, how to enroll, how to recruit, and how to train staff. Of course, there's no way you can do that in 3 days, but their eyes were open. They signed up for mentoring, 25,000 a year. I was like, this is my future. And then I totally stopped doing that because it worked too good. I upper limited so hard. I was like, all right, I'll do that again next year. So went back to running my schools, took on a couple of partners. We built it up to 8 schools, 53 employees, doing like crazy money for martial arts, selling $12,000 cash memberships to a mom whose 3-year-old isn't even as old as the contract she's signing.
12,000. I was so proud of myself when I signed like a $1,200 year-long package for my martial arts school. I'm like, 12,000.
Well, we just kept testing it. It's like, okay, there's a physical limit to the speed of light. It's like 144,000 miles a second or something. There's a physical limit to the speed of sound. It's 1,100 feet per second under dry conditions at sea level. There is no physical limit to how much money you can make. It's all mental. And since money is directly proportionate to the value that you're creating, and most people screw it up and they think the value they're creating is how much they know, wrong. Description drives revenue. Delivery drives reputation. And so a lot of people think that their reputation and their delivery is what creates revenue. Couldn't be more wrong. So I just realized that my ability to describe what it is that I'm selling is what was going to make me more money. And then I realized that it's not about me describing my shiny shit. It's about me describing them to them. Wyatt Woodsmall told me this years ago. We were having a chat at some conference, and he's like, Jesse, if you can explain someone's problem to them better than they explain it to themselves, they will subconsciously and automatically grant you the authority to solve it. And I was like, he read me so hard. And so ever since then, I've been focused on describing my client to them better than anybody else. And that's why, it's been a relatively stress-free sales journey, because after I sold the schools and started coaching, I was like, it's not about me. And I was so insecure in the new wisdom economy that I found myself in. I'm not a karate guy, or I'm a karate guy, but like, what am I going to do? And so I'd go to these events like Consumer Health Summit, Michael Fishman's amazing event, and even Traffic and Confusion and all these different things. And I would go to all these events. I didn't know what my worth was. I just knew I'm going to keep making these videos. I'm going to call them mind vitamins, and I'm just going to be me. And then I'd go to these events, and I knew enough not to like go and sit down and take class, because then I'm just one of everybody else. So I'd buy the platinum badge, just support the guys. But then I just walk around the lobby, acting like I owned it, not making eye contact with anybody. I'm the prize, not the prisoner. And I was totally faking my way into it. I had no idea what I was going to do. But then somebody come up and they're like, what's your deal? What do you do? And I'm like, about what? And they're like, what? No, like, what do you do? And I'm like, well, what do you do? And they're like, oh, 20 minutes going on. And I'm just listening. And I'm like watching the body language. Deeply insecure because I don't know what value I have. But at the end of them talking for 20 minutes about themselves, they're like, dude, this is the best conversation I've ever had. I was like,
this guy's a great listener.
Well, and what was weird is they would pull people and say, you got to talk to this guy. You got to hear what he has to say. And I'm like, I literally said, what do you do? But it's because, the most powerful force in the universe is human attention. I think this is another topic maybe for another time, but I don't think we perceive reality. I think we project reality, and we see exactly what we already believe. So you're an infinite consciousness having a human experience and projecting your beliefs out onto this VR environment. I'm an individual consciousness having my experience, projecting my beliefs, and our beliefs are merging and creating a shared reality. Same for everybody watching, listening to this podcast. If that's the case, and there's no evidence to say that it's not, then that means that our ability to literally create a reality is what we've already imagined. Most people are in reaction to their environment, which is why they keep creating the same thing over and over again. Every sage, every person who's ever had a religion named after them, every mystic has always done the same thing. They said the world is inside of you. And so I just started taking that literally. And back in 2013, 14, when I'm trying to figure out coaching, I just realized it's not about me. Human attention is the most powerful currency in the universe, and most people don't have any. They are bankrupt in their attention, which means that they're in reaction interaction in high level survival. So that when we encounter somebody else, it's like wound competition. It's like, oh, you got that problem, you got that problem, let me give you my problem. And it's like such a low level thing. Because of training, because of fighting, because of all these other experiences, my inner noise was just turned down. And that created even more space for somebody to have their own experience, which is a very liberating thing for people who don't usually experience high quality attention and high quality presence. So when you give somebody high quality attention, high quality presence, it's like emotional oxygen, and you just became the most important person in their life.
Did you see that as a martial art instructor?
Yeah, you can't help but see it. I mean, you know the feeling. It's like you're
Yeah.
teaching class, your attention has to be on everybody, and everybody's got to feel like the most important person in the room.
Yeah, well, on top of that, though, it's when you're talking, I'm remembering back when I was greeting students as they would walk in. It was like my thing because I realized that as soon as they walk in, I'm like, hey, what's up, Patrick? What's up, so and so, whoever you are. Like I was always doing that because I realized these guys, when they come here, they train for an hour, but that they like hang out for 3 hours talking with each other outside, vibe, cleaning up for me. They're
Right,
like best
right.
free employees ever, and
Yes.
and it was like they were escaping whatever reality they had being shoved down their throat, their job, maybe they didn't have a great household, whatever it was. When they came here, it was like they were just escaping it. It was, and I don't think I've really like talked about that out loud. It's just that these are things that are coming to me as you were talking about that. I'm like, it reminds me of that time when it's like,
100%. Well, and it's like, I mean, I train at 10th Planet here in Austin, and there's a saying in the jiu-jitsu community: people come for the chokes, but they stay for the folks. It's like
oh,
you
so
stay for the
true.
people. And it sounds like what you did is, you saw them as human beings, not as belts or
Right.
dollars or anything else. And it's the ultimate currency is attention. When we give people our undivided, genuine attention, you're automatically like you're way past everything.
When you started shifting into what you're doing now, and you said you sold your martial arts schools, can you kind of tell us a little bit about how that was like? Because you said, you built the 8 schools, then you sold it. I've got to believe that was that like an emotionally gut-wrenching thing? Were you like relieved to have sold it and do something else? Can you maybe explain a little bit about that? Because that's always been something really interesting to me.
Yeah, it was a weird time. I had this is like 2010, 2011. I was increasingly aware of the world outside of martial arts, and I could see how to take martial arts there. Like I
Mm.
could, I mean, I sketched out this VR game that had movement sensors on the kid, and it had like a visual metronome of the moves, and the kid had to stay inside the move, and like Guitar Hero, but for
Yeah.
martial arts. So it's like you're tracked, and you got to follow the whole thing, and you take your best instructor and you let all the instructors form curriculum and be a virtual teacher, and you just pay the instructors based on attendance and who plays their game the most. Like I had the whole thing mapped out. Um, may still do it at some point, but very, very thankfully, I had a business partner who I learned so much from. He was such a great mentor in many ways, and at the same time, we were so morally opposed on so many things, like how we saw freedom, how we saw people, how we saw, all these things. And I was just like, let people do what they're going to do. And he's like, no, people need to be guided and controlled and all this. And I was like, my schools are super profitable and I let my people do whatever they want. And he's like, yeah, but they're going to quit. And so we kept butting heads. Um,
Mm.
and I'm putting it very mildly.
Sure, sure.
It was toxic. And thanks to his absolute commitment to being who he was, he created an immovable, unchangeable pushing off point for me. And I was like, all right, well, I'm not going to stay in martial arts and do my own thing. Like this is a great organization. I love the people. So I'm either going to, like succumb to this and become part of this, or I'm going to leave and do my own thing. And just having that thought excited me and scared me. I was like, oh, there it is. I'm like, you know, 8 years old again on the edge of my roof with a rope going, okay, three, two, one. Ah, I didn't jump. Three, two, one. Ah, I didn't jump. Your little 8-year-old balls all the way up inside. You're like, oh, 1, 2, 3, I'm going to jump. I'm a coward. Okay, 1, 2, 3, jump. Like it was the same excited, scared feeling. And I realized, wow, I haven't had this in a long time. have to do it. So a couple of years of being in that feeling and not doing anything with it is eating me alive. And I realized there's never going to be an easy, perfect time to do this. So I wrote down on an index card, I have successfully sold my schools and I wrote an amount for the highest good of all involved. And I looked at that every day, every day, every day. A couple weeks later, my business partner comes into town. We hadn't had this conversation at all. He'd asked me one time, like a year or two earlier, do you ever imagine a life without martial arts? And I was like, yes. And he was like he couldn't imagine that. But I was like, oh yeah. And he was like, oh shit. Anyway, we're having this meeting in a Starbucks, and we're planning out some training for the weekend for all of our team. And I said, while we're planning this training, why don't we do this? Let's imagine a date in the future, and let's plan out what does the company look like 3 years from now, and then let's plan today's training to aim towards that. And while we're planning that date, let's imagine that I'm not there. And he was like, will you be on vacation? I'm like, no, just imagine I'm not there at all. And he's like, but you're a partner, you have to be there. And I said, well, then imagine I'm not a partner. And he got all starts writing. He's like, all right, well, this school is only producing this much. I'm not going to pay you more than that. And this school is only producing this much. And this school is producing this and this and this. That's one of the things I loved about him, is that he was so practical and so numbers.
Right.
He integrated numbers and people better than anybody in the industry, better than most people in business.
Right.
So I really respect and appreciate that about him. But he was like, it was a full on now, I'm not going to pay you more than that. That school is not worth more than that. That school's blah, blah, blah. So he totals all the numbers up for 5 schools that we own together, and then he writes it down. Actually, it was 8 by that point. I had other partners. Writes it all down, totals it up, circles the number, turns the book around, shoves it at me. Now look at the number. It was everything I could do not to laugh. Exact same number that I wrote down a month earlier.
Oh my gosh, no way.
No conversation, no negotiation. He looked at the number. I was like, okay. So signed a letter of intent. 2 months later, I was out.
Wow. Man, talk about the power of visualization as well. You mentioned that about, what was it, when you were fighting in martial art, you're visualizing these things, and now you're visualizing your business essentially and what the future is what it's gonna look like. It's the same thing.
The universe doesn't care. It's
Yeah.
I think about it like pixels on a screen. It is just as much, call it work if you want, energy for pixels on a screen to turn into a black and white photo of a dolphin. It's just as much energy to do that as to show a movie. It doesn't, the pixels don't care what color they are. There's just here's the information. Literally, the universe doesn't care. Do you want $1 million ever, over your whole life? Do you want $1 million over the next 10 years? Do you want $1 million in a year? Do you want $1 million in a month? Would you like $1 million today? The only thing that stops people is their belief about what's possible. Literally the only thing.
So maybe you can shed some light on this. You're definitely much more experienced with at least explaining this for sure, and definitely with it. But I've noticed that, and I noticed it all my life. So when I wanted to make $5,000 a month, and that was I had to make it. I had to make $5,000 a month, or I'm gonna not pay my bills, and I would make $5,100, and then I got into this weird habit of constantly pushing. I don't know if it was a good or bad thing, to be honest, because it put me under a lot of stress. But I would just say, okay, well, I'm making now $5,100 a month because I just did it 1 month. So now I'm doing it every month. So now I should just probably, if I want to make more, I know how I operate. Maybe I should just get a place where my rent is $3,500 a month, and now my car payment is this, and now I got to make $75,000 or $8,000, and I would do it. I would be freaking out the entire month, but somehow, some way, before the first, I would hit my goal, but I would just barely hit it. I was my goal was to make $10,000 a month that month, and I made 10,500 this time, or 9,900, or something silly, but it was right there, and it was almost as if it didn't matter what the number was. The stress level was the same when I was going after it, and I would always hit it because I don't know why, but my back always felt it was against the wall. So I'm saying all this because it's I can see how you can almost manifest things. I've just never been able to clearly describe how or why this works, and I don't know if it's a good advice to be like, well, if you're making $5 grand a month, go get a place that's $5 grand a month, and then you'll make $10 grand a month. But that's how it's been working for me. Um, I don't know if you can kind of share your experience with that kind of thinking, or what you think about that.
Yeah, well, it all. I mean, it does tie back to this concept that we're projecting reality. We're not perceiving it, and our beliefs are like the source code for whatever's projected. It's like the if you're playing a game, you can't play anything in the game that's not already coded into the game. That's why great coders and great programmers make so much money, especially in gaming. There's literally not like you're not going to play Call of Duty and all of a sudden see a fucking StarCraft ship go by. Like they might do some co-branding, but you get the point.
Sure.
Everything you're going to play is already possible within the game.
Right.
So our it's the code that makes it possible. Is that let's say you're playing Call of Duty, is that everything that can possibly show on your monitor? Of course not. Your monitor can literally show anything that's visual,
Hmm.
but the game defines what you're going to see because of the code. And so you change the code, i.e., change the game, the same screen shows something totally different. So reality, as most people understand it, what you can see, smell, taste, touch, hear, and physically feel, kinesthetically feel, that's what people think is reality. Um, I believe that is the residue of reality. It's like the echo of the original signal. The original signal is a feeling and an image. And so the feeling and the image that is held consistently, which again, for most people, what they image and what they feel is a reaction to a previous manifestational output. It's like you're walking down the path, you step in dog shit. You're like, oh God, you pick it up. You're like, let me make sure this is dog shit. Sure is. Woo! Ah, who put dog shit on the trail? And then you throw it down the trail and you wipe your hands off and it's gross. And you're walking, and you step in dog shit. You're like, again? Who the fuck is letting their dog shit everywhere? And you pick it up, it's like, God, it smells just like the last one. You throw it forward and you wipe your hands off. And then you're walking along and you step in dog shit again. This is literally because time in this dimension, seems to be moving what we call forward. It's not really, but it's a useful illusion. So tomorrow is already receiving our intentions, our expectations. We're putting into tomorrow what we are reacting and responding to, what we're saying, what we're thinking, what we're imaging today is going out ahead of us. So there's the vibration, then there's the physical reality. So tomorrow is overwhelmingly is going to include basically all the elements of today. Why? Because all the elements of today are what we are selecting through our attention. That's why when you curse something and it shows up again tomorrow, most people don't realize that a curse and a prayer are the same thing. The universe is blind to English. The universe speaks frequency, energy, image. So if I look at something, I'm like, that sucks, and it shows up again tomorrow, it's because I threw that forward and energetically and emotionally, and it had to show up. But if I can look at something and go, all right, it sucks, but it might be something else. Do I even have to look at this? No. Close Facebook. Okay. Then you're just like, oh, it's actually kind of a nice day outside. I didn't notice my neighbor has such a nice car. And I didn't realize, wow, the lawn guys came today. I just starved that fuckery of my attention and it shrinks. And now I put my attention on something else and it starts to bloom and blossom and grow. Now, the trick is you've got so much momentum on whatever you're already doing, which is why the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. People with great relationships that are constantly creating new memories together tend to keep having better relationships. Somebody who has a relationship and the person says something and they choose to get pissed off by it, just increase the likelihood that that's going to happen. So you're going to do tomorrow what you're doing today is the bottom line. The way you make change happen rapidly is you create the separation between the echo of reality, which is this physical form, and the origin of reality, which is intention, image, feeling. So when you go into visualization, when you go into journaling, when you write a perfect day, when you set the intention, like I tell all my clients this, start the day, and in the beginning, you're probably going to set your timer to remind yourself to do this every hour. maybe even shorter if you've got a lot of negative momentum going. But just do this: set a timer, and when it goes off, ask yourself 2 questions. For the next, till the next timer, for the next 5 minutes, for the next hour, for the next few hours, 2 questions. What do I want to see? And who do I want to be? Dude, it changes literally everything. Because if you say, what I want to see is, I want to see love. I want to see humor. I want to see opportunity. I want to see peacefulness. I want to see beauty, whatever. What do you want to see? And then who do I want to be? I want to be fun. I want to be funny. I want to be wise. I want to be kind. I want to be compassionate. I want to be prosperous. And so you set those 2 things, external and internal. What do I want to see? Who do I want to be? And then that's your thing. And then guy cuts you off in traffic, as he has to, in order to give you what you already believe. People are motherfuckers on the road. That's my belief. So the universe is like, oh, we have to prove to you you're right. Here you go. So then it happens, and you're like, all right, what do I want to see here? I want to see that guy's head on a plate. Oh, no. What do I want to see here? Let me go back to my list. I want to see humor. What's funny about this? God damn it. Well, I noticed that I didn't hit the guy, and I noticed that he's got a bunch of scratches on the side of his car. I guess this is not the first time he's tried something like that. That's actually funny. So it's like, we're in charge, dude. That's the thing. Nobody's doing anything to us. We're creating all of it. And even like the sort of limp personal development philosophy, everything's happening for you, not to you. That's close, but no cigar. And I know you like cigars. It's not happening for you. It's happening through you. Right. It's happening by you. There's nothing in anybody's life experience that they are not directly responsible for. And here come the critics. But what about the kid that I never met in a country I can't even spell, who's being fill in the blank horrible thing? You telling me they chose that? Yes, I'm telling you they chose that. But you don't know what that being actually is. You're looking at the game character. You don't know who the player is. The player is this fucking infinite soul who's playing cosmic Xbox with infinite lifetimes at once, because anybody who's ever done DMT will tell you, time's not real. So they're playing the game in all the fields at once. We get to play one game at a time, most people. I'll stop there for a minute.
Man, this was so good. So, I mean, we're not done, but I mean, this little section here was so good. I'll tell you why. It's because a lot of people that I've spoken about this with, none, and myself included, we don't really know how to communicate what you just said. You just broke down the how, not just the what. And I think that's extremely powerful. Not many people are able to do that. The way you're able to communicate that, it's also what probably makes you such a great teacher, because you can push people through like these different little realities or mental bubbles or something, push us to another membrane or something with what you're saying. I'm curious about, because there's so much stuff I want to talk to you about. Now, leading off of this, you, from what I understand, have chosen to not pay taxes. How, and this is leading from this because like you're creating your own reality. You're doing, I'd love to learn more about this. If you can, I know there's probably a very deep topic, but maybe an introduction into how, why, what got you thinking about it? That's just not a normal thing. People are like, oh, fuck this. I'm not going to be a slave anymore. You're a free thinker. I'm curious how this happened. How did this happen?
Well, I want to go on record and just add one thing to what you said.
Okay.
It's in a modern society, it is extremely hard to not pay any taxes. So I want to just preface what I'm about to say. I have a car that I like very much, and it's got 700 horsepower, and so it's not exactly fuel efficient, but it is extremely joy efficient. So like I get more smiles per gallon out of that thing than like just about anything else that I've ever driven. When I go and pump fuel into that car, like fossil fuel, the stuff that's actually good for the planet because it creates carbon dioxide, which feeds the plants, not like electric cars that are actually awful for the environment. But when I go to fill that car up with good old fashioned gasoline, and I pay whatever I'm paying per gallon. I don't know what gas costs, but I put it in. I know that something like 40 to 50% of the money that I'm spending for that fuel is taxes. It goes to fix the roads. goes to do repairs and all this kind of stuff. I'd like to think it goes there. It probably just goes to pay interest on the
I was
loan.
gonna say, I don't know if it really goes to the roads, man, but
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah. So I do. There are taxes that I pay. When I go and pay a meal, I pay sales tax. And then I don't consider it a tax, but I consider it like literally an appreciation that if I get good service somewhere, and I know that person's like present, and I talk to them usually about like, hey, what's your life like, and what's your goals, and all this stuff. Then I love leaving an appreciation for them, because it was more than a meal and it was more than service. It was like a beautiful human connection. To me, that's valuable. So I don't call it a tax, but I just want to preface everything I'm about to say with that. And I'll give another kind of funny example. Let's say that you and I were bureaucrats in some alternate, weird, upside down world. Okay. And we have no value of our own. Like we have no way to create value. We don't know how to sell. We don't know how to produce. We don't know how to coach. We don't know how to help people, actually help people. And our souls decided that we wanted to come into this life and choose a path that would actually stimulate more innovation and more growth than anything else. Nature, and I think I put this on your comment when you commented on Instagram, that parasites gave us sexual reproduction. I don't know if it was you or somebody else. The reason why species develop sexual reproduction, this sounds like a weird segue, but we'll get back to taxes, is parasite. A parasite forces a species to outrun it genetically. And so many species, like a lot of frogs and amoebas and different things, still produce asexually. They just clone themselves. And there's another one, like tons of species do that. Sexual reproduction, two of the same species having sex, creates an offspring that is genetically the combination of those two, which outpaces the parasite that was working on both of them. So the parasite forces evolution and innovation. I used to think that bureaucrats and politicians had no value at all until I realized, no, parasites are useful, because a parasite doesn't produce any actual value of its own. It's generally not food for something else. It's got the best hiding place you can imagine in the body of something else. And some of them even just like take over. They're like zombies. But a parasite on the big picture serves a beautiful purpose because it creates innovation. It creates invention, new thinking. So I'm very grateful for the parasites of the world, the politicians, the bureaucrats, most lawyers. I'm grateful for all of them because they produce no actual value except a very important job, which is to stimulate creative thinking and innovation and all of that. So let's say you and I were parasites, aka politicians, and we get together and we're like, you know what? How can we do better for ourselves? You know, we're a couple of politicians. And let's say this is back like 5 years ago. A buddy of mine's got a plane. He's got a private island. I hear there's kick-ass parties that are there. Like, I really want to go, but the price tag's $50K per person, and I don't really know how to make money. But how can we do this? And we're like, dude, it's simple. Let's just tell people to give it to us. Yeah, but there's way more of us or way more of them than us. And in this country, they all have guns. How do we get them to do it? Well, most of them are stupid. If we just tell them to do it, they'll do it. We're like, yeah, but I don't know. We need to make this more convincing. Okay, I got a plan. Here's what we're going to do, Carlos. I have a map of the city. Let's just draw a circle around it and just name our circle something fancy like City of Austin or, City of Phoenix. Like, it would be amazing. We'll just name it something. There's Phoenix, like the actual city, but let's call it City of, because what these dumb motherfuckers don't know that in this little book here, Black's Law Dictionary, right in the background there, the word of also means without, like not including the real thing. So they'll never know, even though we put it in plain sight. If they don't disagree, then they're agreeing metaphysically. I'll pause for a second.
Know this. No, oh no. I'm good. No, I'm listening. This is my like wow face.
Okay, good.
That was not a frozen screen.
Good. I like to think that we're getting high on our own.
No, this is man. I'm getting high without getting high.
Yeah. So Black's Law Dictionary defines the word of. One of the definitions of the word of means without. So there's Austin, the geographic territory, the physical place, And then there's the city of Austin, the city without Austin, the corporate artifice, the parasite, the shadow. But we're a bunch of bureaucrats. These people don't know the difference between Austin and the city of Austin. These dumb motherfuckers think it's the same thing. So let's just convince them. And let's get cool suits and pins and badges. And let's hire some security guards and give them guns just because we say they should have them. So they've got guns. And let's do this. Let's draw a circle around the place. We'll call it City of Austin. And then let's just do this to stretch the metaphor a little further. Let's go to their house and just tell them, hey. So we're like, great idea. We get all these people to give us some money. We got our 50K and we're off to the island. So then we knock on their house the next day, and the guy opens his door. He's like, "May I help you?" And we're like, "Hi, you don't know us, but we have this map, and we drew a circle around the city, and we decided that anybody who lives inside the circle has to give us 40% of the income that they earn. So let's start today, and we'll just backdate it for like a year. How's that sound?" Imagine somebody that you don't know, that you've never seen, knocking on your door and saying, "Hi, you don't know me, but I and my friend here drew a circle around your house and we named it this fancy name, and we decided whoever lives in our circle has to give us money."
Sounds
Now
pretty
imagine some madman doing that. How long until you either call the cops, or if it's in certain states, no cops necessary? How long until somebody goes, "This guy's a criminal"?
right. Yeah,
Like
pretty
15
quickly.
seconds.
Yeah.
15 seconds. And we know this innately because there is no human being that has any more right than another human being to tell them what to do. You can only manufacture the illusion of authority. Authority doesn't actually exist. Authority only exists because people insist on believing that it exists. So if this person comes up and says, "You have to do this," and you think they have more rights than you, then you'll go, "Oh shit." Or you think that they have more guns than you, and you're like, "Oh shit." And then you do it. And then you make up stories about why it's okay for you to do that, even though you're violating your own understanding of integrity. We know that this is stupid because every human being has exactly 0 more rights than any other human being. But what happens is, through indoctrination, programming, and massive amounts of justification, but what about the roads? What about the this? What about the armies and all of that? I get it. But it doesn't make it right. And if 150 of them get together and they call themselves a legislature, well, let me do the math. 150 times 0 is still 0. Even a homeschooled kid from South Texas knows that 150 times 0 is 0. So I don't care if there's a million of them that claim to have more rights than me, that gives them the authority to tell me what to do, that I then must do it. No, that is an offer of contract. It is an invitation to do business. And there's not a business on the planet that could survive if they acted like they were forcing people to do business with them.
How do you, because I like that you mentioned it's like a contract. So how do you essentially not participate in this contract? Do you say, do you just not file, or like the first time you file your taxes, are you essentially agreeing to the contract and now you're kind of screwed, or do you know what I'm kind of asking?
I get it, and I want to be sensitive to. There's a lot of nuance here, even though my approach is quite literally the simplest, easiest thing that anybody could ever do on the planet. No education necessary, but I want to be sensitive to where people are at with this. If let's say somebody's watching this, and Carlos told you, or I told you, stand up right now. They might do it, they might not. But if they do it, it's because they chose to do it. If I'm sitting here right now in Austin and I look at somebody who's watching this and I say, "Stand up or else," and they'll be like, "Or else what? You're on a TV right now." Right. Or "I'm going to threaten you, I'm going to hurt you, whatever." Okay, well, you're a screen. I mean, imagine watching a movie and the character, Harry Potter, is like, "Give me 40% of your money." You're like, "Ah, that's a fucking funny movie." Like, The only reason it's real is we're like, oh shit, and we do it. So I only deal with living beings. I only deal with physical reality, even though I don't consider that reality. I think it's the projection of my reality, which means that I only deal with living beings. I only deal with human beings that have souls, that are actually human beings. So if a human being comes around claiming to represent a fictional being and tells me that that fictional being is something that I owe money to, I'm like, I don't deal with ghosts. I deal with people. And right now I'm dealing with you. So what's your name? Who's your employer? Am I the property? Am I my property, or am I the property of you and your employer? Which is it?
Mm.
Is my business mine, or is my business under the control of you and your employer? Okay. Do you have a contract signed by me with my wet signature, which only a human being can sign? Human beings do this. If it's a digital signature, if it's an assumption, that's not me.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a list of 7 questions, which a bunch of them are, I mean, I just gave the biggest ones to you. If the person says, yes, we own you, great, show me where it says that. Under whose authority? Well, you're a citizen of. Show me where it says I'm a citizen. But you live here. No, I live here. I live inside my body. My body happens to be located in the geographic region known as Texas. And I happen to use a sound which sounds like Jesse Elder, because that's the sound that allegedly my parents gave me. I wasn't lucid when that happened, so I'm just assuming that happened. I can't prove that happened. When I was born, this corporate entity, this fictional artifice, created a piece of paper that had the same sound on it, but it's spelled differently because that's in all capitals, and I don't use that. So if you're saying the sound, you're not talking to me. You're talking about this corporate entity, and that's not me. I happen to exist physically in the geographic territory known as Texas, but I never authorized for the sound of my name to be used for commerce in the corporate state of Texas. So if I'm before a magistrate, a judge, or anybody else, I never authorized that name to be used for commerce in the corporate state of Texas. So I assume that there's an injured party with a verified claim before this common law court of record, and that everybody here is sworn in.
Wow.
And you just held that as a court of record, which every state constitution says every court must be a court of record, which means a common law court. And you are just not participating in the invitation to step into the corporate world.
Wow. So that's a lot to take in. Do you have any books or courses, or so, whether they're yours or someone, like, where can we educate ourselves on this?
Yeah, a great place. There's a book called The Most Dangerous Superstition by a very, very smart guy named Larkin Rose. And it lays out the philosophical underpinnings of this, which are obvious once you see them. Then there's a great podcast, Crow Radio, and I think it's 2 or 3 R's with Crow, or no, I think it's Crow 777, or look up Crow Radio.
Okay.
And he's got a great podcast. It's like $7 to join the membership thing, and then you get all the episodes. But do a search, just law. And he's had some amazing authors and speakers, people who do this stuff way, way more than I do. I am, and it's not competition or advance, but I just always have never had any authority. So like, I don't know what it's like outside of martial arts, where that's like granted authority, But like if somebody is like telling you what to do, like, who are you again? So I've played the game. I mean, I've went to jail once. That was interesting because my plates were out and I didn't know what to do. And then the guy was like, "You got to go to jail." I'm like, "Ah." But and TSA, there's always that. But that, to me, that's just a game. When it comes to the real deal, I know who I am, and I know what I am, and I know why I'm here, and I'm from the fucking future where this stuff doesn't even exist. So I'm not gonna pretend that it exists.
Where did Timepiercer come from?
That was an interesting story. I was with a private client. I was in California, and we were taking a break from the strategy design that we were doing, and we went to this little bookstore, it's a super hippie bookstore, and I'm walking around, I'm like, this is cool. I like hippie stuff. This you can't see it, but this is selenite, and it's covered with 9mm cartridges. So
Oh gosh.
crystals and carbines. You got to keep them balanced. So I picked up a rock, and it was this stuff. It was selenite, which I'd never heard of it before or seen it, but it was like this beautiful, like milky white, like translucent. I picked up this rock, and this is weird as fuck. I felt a word enter the top of my head, like kinesthetically. It was like something being put into my head, drove down, and it lodged behind my solar plexus. It's the weirdest thing. Never happened before or since. But I felt this word. It wasn't like I heard it or thought of it. I felt the word was like penetrated my body. And the word was time piercing. And I was like, that is a cool word. What the fuck does that even mean? And I'm holding this thing. I'm feeling this energy. I'm like, this is wild. So I get on my phone and I look up time piercing. And of course, I get a bunch of like tattoos and piercing, shops. And I keep looking, time piercing, one word, time piercing. I had to get to like the third page of Google,
Wow.
like where search results go to die, It's
Yeah.
like, and it was like some obscure amulet from a video game character from some game that doesn't even exist anymore. I was like, this is weird. Like, this is such a good word. So I just wrote the word down in my journal later, time piercing. And I just kept looking at it, time piercing. What does that even mean? Time piercing, time piercing, time piercing. And little by little, I began to have ideas and information and insights. And I would just kind of write down words about the past and the future and the present. And then in meditating and just randomly out of nowhere, it seems, I began to understand the time is just a perception. The only real time is now. Past is still happening in another now, and it's just like a frame in a picture or a pixel that's just always there. And it can be this one, this one, this one, this one, or this one, like the king on a chessboard. It can become any of those, but it is always just what it is. And what we think about as the past is just another present, but we can think of the past pretty accurately because this illusion of linear time, we remember being there and now we're here, so we can touch that memory and think about it, and it was there. And then we can imagine the future, but that's a little harder to do because the future hasn't happened yet, which is not true. It is happening right now, just in another now. So I began to wonder, well, if you can think about the future, or if you can think about the past vividly, well, what if, and this is a weird thought when it first came to me, I can remember being a kid, imagining what I would be like as a grown up. And all of a sudden I began to have very specific memories of being a kid where I was like, a teenage, like a 12-year-old thinking about like being with a girl, or being like 15 years old thinking what it would be like to have my own school, and all those pretty, understandable visualizations. Then I opened my school when I was 23, and I remember the first day, taught my first classes. My family came there. It was great. Then my family left, and it was like, all right, January 15th, 1996. I'll never forget it. And I'm there. I'm like, I just got chills. I'm like, this is my school. And I closed my eyes. And this is like way before the time piercing stuff. But when I started thinking about time piercing, this is the moment that I went to. Being in my school and remembering being 16 years old, probably 17, and I'm going to open my own school someday. I'm going to have my own school. And I would imagine what it was like to have my own school, how it would feel. And now I'm 23 and I have my own school, and I closed my eyes and I was 17 again. And all of a sudden, now fast forward, and I'm in this time piercing exploration in 2015 or 16, and I put those two things together, and I thought, me at 23, remembering me at 17, imagining being 23. I didn't know I was going to be 23, but forget about the age. It was the feeling and the image, source of all creation. So I'm 23, remembering 17, imagining 23. Oh, fuck. It's all one thought. So when I was
Wow.
17, I touched that thought. When I was 23, I touched the thought again. It's that same thought. It's like music that's happening all the time. If you have a guitar there and I got a piano here and I'm playing piano, the music's here, but it's also there. It's not limited by space because we have this beautiful little technology. And you could be on the guitar and the music starts there, but the music is also here. So the music transcends space. It's everywhere. So the memory and the imagination is the same note. It's the same feeling. So when we think about the past, specifically, we think about a time that we were imagining the future. Now we're connected to that node, to that moment of consciousness and this moment of consciousness, because our soul's playing Cosmic Xbox, playing all the characters at once. So you remember he's imagining, you remember he's imagining, there's resonance, there's connection, you feel what he felt, he's feeling what you felt, you're there at the same time, just different nows. So if that's the case, and there's no evidence to prove that it's not, it's all subjective and it's all subjectively provable, then why not, after you do that and you warm up that connection a little bit and you play some chords on the time-space continuum and you go to a great memory of the past and remember that guy imagining you, and maybe you were remembering him, which is why he imagined it, and maybe he imagined it, which is why you're remembering it. Does it really matter? No, it doesn't, because they're both accurate. So you warm that up, you get past your disbelief and all your Newtonian conditioning and time's real and all that bullshit. And then you're like, all right, I am now going to become receptive to my future self, whoever wants to pop in, to remember me so that I can imagine him.
Wow, Jesse. Man, it's very rare. I feel like that I have these like big aha moments anymore. I've had like 2 or 3 on this call so far. I've gotten chills every time. Um, it's crazy because I usually know what to say next, but you keep leaving me stumped in thought. Like, huh? Now how do I work on my imagination skills? Like that's where I'm going. Like in my mind.
It's a brilliant question. It's actually, I think, the best question anybody can ask after experiencing what you just experienced. And it's by what I shared, and I'll say it again. You warm up this experience. I call it time piercing. It seems to me the most accurate term. You warm it up by going to a fond memory of the past, specifically one where if you can remember a time that you were imagining the future. It's weird. It's also just part of the game of life. Most people don't have many memories of imagining, and this is perfect. How like we were born at this time because most people went to school. How much time are you given in school to daydream?
Uh, None, dude. I forgot what it was like to imagine. This is actually that's why I'm so fascinated by this because I've always kind of I shouldn't say always over the last 4 or 5 years I've started feeling like like what are really some of my weaknesses. Like I'm good at talking to people when I want to talk to people. I'm good at doing all these things, but like I can't paint a picture. Maybe I got to stop saying I can't. But when I close my, so people will say like Tiffany is great at imagining things. So she'll say, hey, picture this, close your eyes, picture this. I'm like, well, when I close my eyes, it's just black. There's
Mm-hmm.
nothing there. I see
And
nothing.
dude, that is extremely common, and I believe that is a result of programming and conditioning. What's the most? We've talked about it on the call, but what is the most powerful force that we're aware of? I believe it's human attention. So
Right.
if you're, let's go back to the parasites. If you're a parasite and you know that the most powerful force is human attention, whether through some occult practice or just somehow you just know your role is to try and control people so that they can become more free because they hate your control, it's perfect. So then what do? You create a school system, which in this country happened right after the Civil War because the federal government, the United States of America.
Oh, geez, now I'm thinking of everything going
It's all
around.
connected. That's the best part. It's all connected. And it's a game. There's no need to rush to try and get it all. Like it's a fun game. You're just playing one level at a time. So the United States of America, the 13 colonies, District of Columbia, and then there's America, right? The states. And they had a war. And it wasn't over slavery, it was over national debt, but that's another topic. So then they decided, the government that won, decided we cannot afford for this sort of difference in opinion to ever happen again. And what's happening prior to the Civil War, guess how most kids were experiencing education?
They're taught down through family,
Yes.
imagining,
Little
experience the way
house on the
you were taught,
prairie,
man.
one room schoolhouse, older kids helping the younger kids,
Right.
strong community. And the government is like, unacceptable. So they literally copy and pasted from the Prussian Empire, like
Wow.
dude, the word kindergarten, it means garden of children, all the same. Like
Oh
it's
my.
right there. So they copy and pasted the Prussian system, which is very mechanical, very diabolical, actually, very efficient if you're not dealing with people, if you're dealing with machines, which is the beginning of AI, but that's a whole other thing. Um, so they copy and pasted the educational system, brought it to the United States, got a bunch of funding, and institutionalized, like within a few years, like a decade, to create a centralized public school system. Of course, families are like, no, like, we don't want your school system. We've got ours. And the United States of America that won the war said, you don't have a choice. You have to do this. The last village or town to resist this was Barnstable, Massachusetts, late 1800s, and the United States Army went in with rifles and kicked down doors, grabbed children out screaming to take them to state schools.
Wow. That actually happened? That's
Look up Barnstable, Massachusetts education.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I feel like we're starting to almost like revert back. I mean, we're going to be homeschooling our daughter, and my buddy Brandon and his wife Sophia, they homeschool their three kids. I feel, and our buddy Kyrie, I believe, is going to be homeschooling his daughter and his son most likely too.
Yeah.
So it just seems. I mean, I don't know if it's because I'm in this circle of people, but it
Well,
just seems like this.
on a macro level, that's the reality you're projecting, so that's what you're experiencing.
Oh gosh, here we go. Oh, I love this.
So it's all connected. But anyway, these they created the school system, which is totally standardized, controls children's time, controls their attention, controls their bodies, and basically breaks them like breaking a horse, and gets them to accept this illusion of authority under pain of punishment, creates conformity, competition, scarcity, obedience. So by the time somebody goes through this, and they've been practicing this, dude, since like the 1870s, and they just get better and better and better and better and better at practicing it. So now you're in a place where most adults, when they try and visualize, they experience what you're saying, only because it's like, imagine if you've been in a straitjacket for like 18 years, and then the straitjacket comes off and everybody's like still walking around like this, and you're just like, all right. And then you see somebody who's like, what's up, man, how's it going? You're like, you fucking freak, what's
Makes
wrong
you
with you? You're like,
uncomfortable. Yeah.
spasming, this guy's having a seizure, put a jacket on him. And so our imaginations is the same thing. This is why psychedelics are demonized and reviled and all of this. Good luck stopping that. It's not going anywhere. When I created the meditation called the Prime Light meditation, the time piercing is a main component of that. And I made a video, I put it on YouTube, and I called it the world's most dangerous meditation, because this is the meditation that gives you your attention back. It gives you your imagination back. And it's just like a muscle. It doesn't happen right away. But as you
Right.
keep building and keep building and keep building, you begin to dream more. You begin to lose interest in things that aren't good for you. You begin to naturally be interested and attracted to things that are good for you. You begin to have imagination of your future self. You become like a child again, in the sense that you love pretending. The word pretend is not one word, it's two. It's to tend in advance. It's to pretend.
I've got to introduce you to my old instructor, Dwight Woods. I don't, maybe you guys know each other. I have no idea. But he, you and him are like very similar, man. He would always talk about remember, because I would say something about remember. He's like, you're just becoming a member again of whatever it was. He would always do that, and it would always make me thinking. And that's why when I hear you talk, it brings me back to like this best time of my life, because no one really talks about this type of stuff. And in that martial arts school, this is
Actually, many people talk about it, and many more people are talking about it all the time. And for more and more people every day, like hundreds of thousands of new people
yeah.
or I should say, hundreds of thousands of people are talking about this for the first time. and having experiences similar to what we're having here. And that genie doesn't go back in the bottle. And so that's why, I mean, it's another topic, but that's why COVID happened so fast, because they're like, we're running out of time to like hold consciousness down. Consciousness is like, fuck you, let's go. There's always going to be parasites. There's always going to be parasites. And all these new age people, they're like, the world's going to be great. Everybody's going to love each other. Impossible. War is going to get worse. Peace is going to get better. Prosperity is going to be mind-blowing, and poverty is going to make a favela look like a fucking mansion in Beverly Hills. So the whole spectrum is just increasing because it's just a menu. Imagine being in a restaurant where it's the same two things every time. No, that's not how it works. That's not how cell division works. That's not how evolution works. Everything is expanding. We're in a universe that's expanding, and we're part of that universe. We're creating that universe. But so the menu is just expanding. So just because there's something on the menu that you don't like doesn't mean you get rid of it. It means you don't order it. And how do you order? Through your attention. So yes, you read a story about the drug cartels and how they're raping kids and all of this. Does that exist? Yes, it exists. Does it exist in your reality 5 seconds before you read that article? No. Is you knowing about that going to make it better? No. If it's part of your spiritual quest, if it's part of your soul playing Xbox, you go, oh, let's go in that room and work array. And next thing you know, you find yourself in Ciudad Juarez, and you've got a 9mm, and there's a dude raping a kid. You're like, fuck it, let's go. I love what Kyrie said about aliens versus predators. Remember that post?
I don't remember that. What did he say?
I already gave away the punchline, but he was like, half of you guys, I'm going to murder, but you get the point. He's like, so many of you guys complaining about, all these, pedophiles, and so many of you complaining about all these illegal immigrants. I say we just put them together and call it aliens versus predators. I love that guy.
That is funny. That is funny.
But so if it's part of your quest and your sincere desire and your intention to help, heal, whatever, you'll be guided to that. I was born to be a teacher. There's no question. This is literally why I was put on the planet, is to be a teacher. So having understood that and accepted that, everything in my life goes through that. So my job is not my job. I don't think we're here to do anything. I think we're just here to be. Like the sun exists, it's not here to give the earth light. It just gives the earth light as a byproduct of its existence. It doesn't have a quota. It's not trying to reach outcomes. Only humans do that. If the earth ceased to exist today, sun would be like, it would be literally ignorant, oblivious to the fact. It wouldn't be like, great, I've recaptured some of that sunlight the earth was taking. It's not how it works. So if you're born, if you know what you are, then you just be that, and then the radiant byproducts of what you're being will be the most profitable, productive thing that you can do. Like our Ron Lynch talks about money as a resource, a byproduct. It's a byproduct of this. So anyway, back on the point, I was born to be a teacher, and in order to be a teacher, I have to accumulate as much XP as I can, internalize it, assimilate it, refine it, simplify it, elderize it, make it fun, make it weird, make it quirky, make it interesting, and then share it. I will do that regardless of whether anybody's there or not. I posted a video today with me car surfing to make a point about courage.
I saw it, dude. That was great.
It was a fun experience. But one of my students, a really cool lady, Charlotte, she commented, she was like, I wonder if, sometimes people post stuff just because people are watching, and I wonder if you would have done that without the camera. And she was very respectful, but I said, yes. I mean, the shit that I did before iPhones came out would make that look tame. So I'm not doing it for anybody. I'm doing it because I'm here to do it. I have to do it. I have to experience life. And as long as it's within the moral boundaries of do no harm and take no shit, then everything's fair game. And I've recreated and broken and creatively destroyed and recreated again my own moral code, so that what I consider right and wrong is constantly being reinvented and refreshed. Do no harm, take no shit, and it keeps getting more and more and more and more. As a result of that, the ideas and the philosophies and the tools and the processes and the practices and the stories and the metaphors and all this stuff is just endless. So me sharing that, it has to happen. It's just what I am. And it's not better or worse than anybody else's role. There's a lot of teachers, there's a lot of healers, there's a lot of parasites, there's a lot of confused people who are actually like in a stage of like pre-excellence. They're just like confused, and so they're just like kind of. It's like their character's glitching, and the player's like,
Sure.
"Oh fuck you, God, he's glitching, ah!" And you're just that's fine. It's all part of the game. And there's definitely some, cosmic alien playing, Xbox who's like, I am going to play an advanced character. So let's see. I'm going to be born. I'm going to spawn into Nazi Germany as a Jew.
Oh gosh.
Like, boom. Like, all right, no, don't get on the train. Don't get on the train. Oh, I got on the train.
Oh,
All right. All right, he's on the train. All right, here we go. Don't take a shower. Don't take a shower. Don't take a shower. Take a shower. All right, respawn. All right, where do I want to go now? That was a fun game. Oof. All right, like the soul doesn't care, and I don't mean obviously. I'm not trying to be offensive to anybody. I'm not ever trying to offend anybody. It happens naturally, but the idea of not taking this life so seriously, so that we can recreate ourselves, because none of this is as real as we think it is. It's very real, but what's more real is what we imagine and what we feel. That is the true source of reality. And it takes a strong person, a strong soul. It takes a strong heart to look at something and realize that what they're seeing is an echo. So I'm here to recreate a new meaning around this thing that I saw. When my dad went to, jail and was being sentenced, and I was 10 years old in the courtroom, and they're like, the jury has found the defendant, Jack Elder, guilty on all these counts, and I'm doing the math in my 10-year-old brain. Every guilty count is 7 years federal. I'm never going to see my dad again.
Oh my gosh.
Dude, in that moment, I grew up, dude. My whole like little 10-year-old body was like zipped up, stone-faced. I was an adult because I now have to take care of my mom, my brothers. That was the meaning that I created as a reaction to this, shocking news. But as time went on, I realized, well, that's just one way of looking at that thing. And I can always go back and look at it from a different perspective, remold the clay into something that's useful. So did that event happen? Well, those are the words that were spoken, but the meaning is the real event. So I just went back and relived it and put myself in this sort of tranced out state, put myself in that 10-year-old body, and then that was a little too intense. So then I put myself next to the 10-year-old. I got my arm around him. I'm like, hey, it's going to be intense. You got this. You got this. And bam, okay, here's what it really means. It really means you're going to get an amazing lesson in principles. And by the way, you don't know this yet, but in this particular reality that we're co-creating, your dad never goes to prison. He actually goes to a halfway house for 5 months and let him out a month early if he promises not to tell the press, because the press loves him so much. And that's going to give you even more love and respect for your dad. And you're going to harbor this for about a decade and a half, and then you're going to confront him, tell him you're angry. You're both going to cry. You're going to forgive him. You're going to love each other more than ever. So don't worry, little guy. Peace out. And it was, dude, it was done. It was done.
It's so cool that you just brought that up. One of the things, it's cool. Again, another reason I love talking to you. It just reminds me of things I've like done sporadically and just maybe never done again for whatever stupid reason. But whenever I've been in like, I guess the toughest parts of my life, like when I was broke, I was almost homeless, I was sleeping on the ground, a terrible part of those sections of my life, or so I thought. Best memories came from that. But interesting stuff is, anyways, I remember being in my old apartment years ago and almost in tears. If I'm being honest, I was in tears.
Sure.
And I had never done this before, but I like asked my future self to help me. I was like, there's no way this is, man, it's getting me choked up. I was like, there's no way this is my life. There's no way, like, help me. I wasn't asking God. I was literally asking my future. So I was like, I would close my eyes in my tears. And this is that now I'm actually imagining it. I was imagining what I would look like when I was older. I was in great shape. I had this car. I had a house. I had a family. I had this thing. And it's not like it was an exercise I was trying to necessarily do. It just kind of happened in this emotional moment of like, I don't know where I'm going from here. And it's like this older version of me just said, just keep on pushing forward, keep on doing this, like focus on what, and it's like, I was just listening to my future self almost. And it's like, I'm listening to you and that sounds almost like the way you were doing this, right? Like
exactly it.
It's crazy because these things happen. I'm not special about this. I think they happen to us all, probably sporadically. And there's people like yourself who've been able to use it almost like a tool and say, okay, I can do this when I want, not when I'm emotionally
Yeah.
just freaking out.
And it is such a beautiful experience, and that strong emotion is always an indicator of our purpose and our true being. Kids are very emotional because they haven't been layered over with conditioning to not be emotional, especially boys. But we are emotional beings. Like feelings are the language of our soul. The universe doesn't speak English or any other spoken dialect. And so what you just described, being in a moment of intense pain, it's like there's a circuit breaker that we have. And it's like our player, the real us, like our soul, our inner being, the infinite self is playing the character, and the character is really in a bad spot. What do? You hit the nitrous boost. What do?
Yeah.
You bring out
Pump
your
in the cheat codes real
extra
quick.
spell. Yeah. But you only do it when you really need it, or
Right.
you do it when you really need it. But need is two things: extreme pain and extreme inspiration. So
Hmm.
it's like sales. You solve a painful problem, you always make money. And sometimes that painful problem is the awareness of a new opportunity that is right there. It's fast, it's easy, and it's so much better than what you've got now that choosing not to have it is painful. And so there's always pain and joy that's involved. So I think our infinite soul or infinite player, infinite self is playing, character gets in a tight spot, and you hit the bonus button, you hit the boost button, you hit the spell, you grab the mushroom, whatever it is, and all of a sudden you're like, but it doesn't have to be pain based. It can also be extreme joy based, or this is the mind blower for people. It can be on a random Thursday afternoon for no other reason than like, let's see what happens if I do this. And all of a sudden, you can have the most mystical, non psychedelic experience you've ever had. There's like, there's human, there's transhuman and be all machine, but then there's this idea of being hyperhuman. And hyperhuman is like what humans are going to become. Not this transhumanist bullshit and all the other woke shit that's trying to distract people from what it means to actually be a human. A whole other thing. And I will say this, and with full transparency, I used to be trapped in a woman's body. I don't know if you know this.
What? He used
Yeah,
to be trapped in a woman's body. Explain that, please.
but then I was born. So
I was like, where's he going with this? Where's he going with this one?
So the idea of, just choosing to have this mystical experience, it's a choice. It's like right next to this choice, which is right next to this choice, which is right next to this. So all this distraction of like confusing people about what it even means to be human.
Hmm.
You got Sam Harris, who's like, well, there's still some people that believe that humans are special. Like, not you, apparently, Sam.
Yeah.
And it's like he's a total believer in determinism. I'm like, look, if you want to believe in determinism and you want to believe that things are already predestined, you're free to believe that. Like, incredible. But that's beautiful. It's part of it. If we all thought the same, this would be such a boring place, and it would actually implode instantly. You need variety and contrast to keep expanding. So there's transhumanism, which is the total, narrative right now. Machines are better. We should be scared of them. No, we need to join them. We need to become them. Great, thanks, Elon. Just tiny little hole in your head. That's all you need. Oh, people
Oh,
were starting to
Matrix.
doubt Elon. Make him an MMA star. Oh, good. Then they'll like him again. Even the men will like Elon. Okay, great. Nothing to see here. So, but then there's hyperhumanism, and hyperhumanism is all these latent abilities that we have, which some people have very well developed. There's blind people that can go and fucking hear their surroundings. They can get an echolocation. It's crazy. There's people that can sense, radio waves and different magnetic layers. There's definitely people that can read minds. There's supposedly, I'm not one of them, but there's people who can co-locate. I mean, we don't know what we can do is the bottom line. And that's where we're headed. So it's very exciting to think about what's possible when we just start playing with our imaginations a little bit more in a light, playful way, not a needy, this is the secret, it needs to work kind of way. You just create more neediness. So there's a lot
You
more, but
Yeah, I don't want to keep you for too long, so I kind of want to just touch on one more thing, and we'll go from there. But you've got Freedom Farms, is that right?
Yep.
How did that come about? Yeah, I mean, I see you from the outside, and I was looking at it like, man, this guy Jesse is really living it, man. He's not just talking that shit. He's living a free life, a free man's life, has his own farm. I assume you grow your own food if it's a farm. And how did that happen? If you could just kind of share that, because that's really
Yeah,
cool.
it's a good story, and it's a brief one because it was so simple. It was 2020. The whole COVID theater started in like March.
I love your language. I gotta learn how to communicate like
Yeah,
you. This
uh,
is
just do 5,000 Facebook videos. It's
that's
easy.
it, man. That's it.
It's like, how did you get to be a great martial arts teacher? Go teach a
Go
thousand
teach us.
classes.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, but anyway, and I think there was a virus that came out of a lab. But the idea of COVID theater started. I was in my place, I was at a place at the W Hotel, and I just moved in like the month before, and then all this lockdown stuff started. So I was like, I'm not going to learn anything if I'm here. Like, I need to experience life. So I packed up my Forerunner, had this rooftop tent, badass like bull bars, fuel tanks. And I'm like, I'm gonna go on a just tour of the country. And the first place that popped into mind is I want to go see an LA hospital. So I drove to LA, and I was like in the hospital. I was like, where's all the families' cars that are parked? And they're not here. Interesting. I was like, all
Oh,
right.
really?
And there's definitely some confirmation bias because I saw an Eddie Bravo clip, and he's like, why aren't the homeless people dying? I'm like,
Such a great simple question.
I know. Anyway, I was like in LA, and so I ended up on this long road trip, just visiting friends along the way. And when I was driving back in, something great about drives, you've got just enough of your attention occupied, so you don't like go all the way into delta waves and like fall asleep, but you're basically motionless, and there's the steady rhythm of the road, especially if you don't have any music on. So I'm just like 3 o'clock in the morning driving through some remote part of Utah or something, and there was literally like tumbleweeds blowing in front of me, and I was like, "Fuck, this is a magic moment. This is great." So I'm just like, "All right, I'm receptive to whatever I need to think and feel. If it's something I want to think, as a past part of me, a future part of me, maybe some super future part of me that's like, already like in the DMT realm and coming back to visit whenever you pop it or whatever. I don't know. So I'm just open. So I'm driving, feeling good. And that's the key. Like, you just gotta feel good. So I'm feeling good. I'm like, is this as good as I can feel? Immediately it's like, I'm like, oh shit, wow, this feels great. All right, is this it? No. Oh my god, wow. It's like if MDMA took MDMA. It was just like Molly on Molly. It's like, what is this? Is amazing. So now I'm in this like beautiful space, and I get this image or like a message: get property. And it was a very serious, almost urgent kind of thing. It's like, get property. I was like, wow, that was real. Okay. And I kind of forgot about it, keep driving, thought about it again, and it kept coming back. Next thing you know, I'm watching YouTube videos on homesteading and all this. I'm like, wow, this feels like the future, my future. Not possessively mine, but like I'm included in
Right.
that future. So I get back to Austin and start looking at properties, and it was like Goldilocks. I saw one place, too rocky. Another place, too hilly. Another one, wow, just right. Ended up making an offer. The guy accepted it. I paid way more than I needed to, but less than I was willing to, because he had a bunch of competing offers from like California buyers and wanted to pay cash, and I was like, no, Texas. So I bought the land, 20 acres. 2 months after I bought it, Tesla announced they're opening a factory here. The property value went up 96% in year over year. Um, and I had the vision. It's to grow food for 50 people a year and to have a place where I can play, grow, do whatever I want. We want to shoot, we want to do jujitsu, we want to shroom out, we want to do bushcraft and survival, like whatever you want to do, that's the place I want. I don't want it to be too far from Austin, but I don't want it to be too close either, just in case. So it was like all these things, and it was the perfect one. Many of the criteria I didn't even realize I wanted until I had it, like being at the end of the end of the end of the end of a road. Like nobody's driving past that place. Being surrounded and backed up by 800 acres of old Boy Scout camp, like who? Like, I couldn't have designed it better. Being surrounded by what I have come to call socioeconomic camouflage, with like bathtubs in the front yard and
Oh, gotcha.
cars and tweaker houses. I was like, yes, I want all this surrounding me. So nobody's going to be driving by going, I bet there's money around here. So
Right.
it's like, couldn't have been better. So I end up getting this place, buy the property, knew automatically I'm not going to be farming and growing. Like, that's not my role, but I'm going to create an opportunity for somebody else. Long story short, ended up hiring somebody. We struck a great deal. He flew here for over 2 years, 1 week every month, built the vision, built the team. He concluded the project earlier this year. We now have a manager that he had trained who's a genius in his own right. So he works full time on the property. He's got people working under him. It's completely self-managing. I have literally nothing to do with it.
Oh man, I love this. That's just so cool, dude. That's so cool. So do you have any uh feelings or dreams about actually moving down there, or is that where you are now, or
Not right now. It's raw land, so there's no structures on it other than a well and a pump house that we put in. But
oh,
eventually, yes, eventually it's going to be super tricked out.
the well is like the most important part, dude. That's
First thing we're
probably the
doing
most expensive or one of the more expensive pieces or nice one other than that.
is the best 30,000 I've ever spent in my life.
Yeah,
Second from
100%.
having like great mentors and coaches, like having a well, like your own water is insane.
It's yeah, you're totally independent. Jesse, man, thank you so much for coming on here. This was like an honor to have you and
Great.
to speak with you.
We'll do it again.
I love it. Where can people learn more about you, man?
Best place probably for this community is Freedom Teachers. It's a Facebook community. That's where you saw the live the other day. Freedom Teachers community, or they could just follow me on Instagram, Timepiercer at Instagram, or Jesse Elder on Facebook. And I am right now. We're a couple of days out from a launch of Freedom Teachers